Are you ready to hear 22 paranormal confessions? Make yourself comfortable and don't miss a single detail. I don't know which one is the creepiest, but they are definitely worth listening to. 1. The dog who sees spirits. My dog has a nasty habit of scratching the door in the middle of the night. One evening she wouldn't stop scratching the door for any reason. After calling her 5 times, I threw a pillow towards the door to make her stop. That's when she barked, from right beside me. She'd been next to me the whole time. By Victoria. 2. Shadowy figures descending from the ceiling. When I was little, every night when the lights were turned off and I went to sleep, 2 dark forms would descend from the ceiling near the doorway into my room. They walked quietly up to my bed and one stood on each side of my headboard, looking at me. I would cover my head with the blanket until one day I had the courage to tell my mother. She put a lamp in my room and told me to pray and ask them to leave. I sleep with a lamp on all night to this day. By Alba. 3. The Phantom Student. One day during a break in class, a friend of mine put his head down and took a quick nap. I took this photo to show some other friends who were in another classroom. When I took the photo, nobody in the room was standing, there was nobody behind me who could have cast a shadow, and there was nobody walking by in the classroom. By Mariana. 4. Caressed by a Spirit. My father died in 1996 when I was 10 years old and my brother was 12. We slept in a bunk bed and my brother had the upper bunk while I had the lower one. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night with someone softly caressing my head. I thought it was my brother and ignored it. When I went back to sleep, the feeling returned. I got out of bed to confront my brother, but he was snoring quietly. I went back to bed and the caressing began a third time. I've never prayed so hard in my life. I prayed until sunrise the next morning. By Ernani. 5. Hands of Blood and Bone. When I was about 8 or 9 years old, my mother worked nights and we shared a double bed. One day I felt a strange presence in the bedroom. I had my eyes closed and when I opened them I saw hands wrapped around the bed from underneath. The hands were made of blood, bone, and hanging skin and they tried to climb up the bed. I turned away and there was a white shadow lying next to me. I managed, after a long time, to get up and run to my grandmother's room. She didn't dare come back to the bedroom with me. By Anonymous. 6. Grandmother's Spirit. My grandmother lived with my family during the last months of her life. She died on the sofa in our house one Sunday night. The following week, I started to see someone in white passing through the house occasionally, and when I went looking for them, there was never anyone there. My sister claimed that she actually saw physical forms. We were terrified for a good while until my sister and I could no longer sleep in our rooms because we were too afraid. My mother prayed, burned the couch in the backyard, and we never saw anything again. By Aline. 7. The Bearded Man in Black. When I was about 5 or 6 years old, I woke up to a noise in my room. When I opened my eyes, there was a man standing in front of me with a big brown beard, dark hair, and black clothes. I kept looking at him in fear and backed away on the bed until I was up against the wall. Then I felt the mattress sink down beside me and I started to cry. When I looked again, he had vanished, but it still seemed as if there were someone lying next to me on the bed. I asked it to leave because I was afraid and the bed returned to normal. I cried myself to sleep and I still remember the man's face to this day. I'd never met anyone who looked like that and neither had my parents. By Beatrice. 8. The Haunted Building. I work in an old building that was built in 1929. The space was closed for at least 20 years before we moved in because the previous owner had killed his wife and then himself. We moved in 2 months ago and almost every day at exactly 12:08 p.m. the bell for the front door rings, but there's never anyone there. We've looked at the security recordings and everything, and there's never anyone there. The other day I was alone in the office late in the evening. I was on my way out, so I turned off all the lights, closed the windows, and activated the alarm. When I turned to close the door, the kitchen light was on even though I had just turned it off. Another time, I arrived in the morning and the light in the main room turned itself off. I even heard the sound of the switch flipping. The last straw was when I saw someone else's face next to mine in the reflection of my computer screen. There was no one there when I turned around. I decided to talk about these things with the building manager's wife, who's lived in the building for several years. She assured me that it's actually pretty quiet in the building these days and that there used to be a lot more strange occurrences, and at least now she can take the elevator by herself. I just laughed nervously. By Elmiro. 9. Nightmare Time. My mother always complained that she had a lot of nightmares, but she would never say what her dreams were about. One day while we were at the mall, I suggested that she wait in the food court while I was getting our food. When I returned with our meals, she had a strange look on her face, so I asked her if she was okay. She said she was fine, so we finished our meals and left. As we were riding down the escalator to leave, I turned to talk to my mother, and I almost had a heart attack because standing behind her was a man in old-fashioned clothing holding one of my mother's shoulders and looking at me with a very angry expression. She saw the shock on my face right away and shouted at me asking what was wrong. When I told her what I had seen, she started crying and said, "You just described the man that tries to kill me every night in my nightmares." By Anna. 10. The Faceless Figure. When I was 15 years old, I stayed up late watching a TV marathon with my sister. In the middle of the night, after my sister had fallen asleep, I saw the nearby computer mouse start moving by itself. I called my mother into the room and she said it was probably a rat that was pulling on the cable from underneath the desk and that I should just go to sleep. Suddenly, I swear I saw a black figure with no face or human features behind the bookcase. It looked in my direction and pointed. I nearly shat myself with fear. I remember saying, "Who are you? I do not want you in my house. Nobody wants you here. Get out of here now." The thing left, and I actually heard it hit the cabinet before it just went through it. The cabinet began to sway and the door slammed and made a loud bang. By Wesley. 11. My Possessed Friend. One time my husband and I had some friends over to eat pizza. One of my friends, who has always been very mystical, began to feel ill in the kitchen and excused himself to our bedroom. Once he was in the bedroom, he started to rock back and forth and giggle in a voice that made my hair stand on end. I ran out of the room, shivering with fear. My husband went in to check on him and soon returned saying our friend wanted to talk to me. I went into the bedroom where my friend walked up to me with his eyes rolled back into his, made a few little grunts and said, "This is my house." Then he knelt and kissed my feet, rubbed his hand on my belly, and motioned as though he was nursing a baby. When he knelt again, the phone rang loudly and he came out of the trance. About a month later, I found out I was pregnant, which may explain the gesture he made. My father-in-law had died 8 months before this incident, which might explains that this is my house. To this day it still terrifies me. By Marialee. 12. Beaten up by a ghost. For years ago, I woke up in the middle of the night and there was a woman in a black dress standing beside my bed. When I sat up, she started to accuse me of having done things that I hadn't done, saying that I had apparently stolen someone from her. I don't know what was going through my head to argue with a ghost, but eventually I decided to ignore her and go back to sleep. She then pulled me out the bed while attacking my body. She suddenly disappeared and I was so afraid I couldn't get back to sleep. The whole thing felt so real that I was actually sore the next day, especially around my ankles where she had grabbed me while pulling me from the bed. By Yasmin. 13. The Devilish Joke. I was once playing with a Ouija board in my room with a friend. We tried to light some candles and, crazy as it sounds, they just wouldn't light no matter how long I held the match to them. After a little while, I managed to light them and we turned off the lights and closed the windows. Out of nowhere, my friend's mother called her, asking if everything was okay with her. Apparently, she suddenly felt a pang of worry. After my friend calmed her mother down, we started using the Ouija board, but nothing happened other than the candle flames moving kind of strangely. Later in the evening, after my friend had already gone home, I felt a sensation of being watched. I ignored it and went to sleep, but had nightmares about being chased by a scary beast with enormous claws, and when I managed to wake up I saw that my legs were scratched up. I couldn't sleep anymore, so I threw the Ouija board in the trash and slept cuddled up next to my mother for 2 weeks. By Barbara. 14. The Shining Old Man. When I was 13 or 14 years old, I shared a bedroom with my sister and there was a mirror on the wall across from my bed. I woke up to a very bright light one night, as if someone had been shining a flashlight in my face. When I opened my eyes, I saw an old man in a hospital gown with a really long beard in front of the mirror. It was the old man that was shining so brightly. He was putting on a feather necklace and saw me looking in the mirror. I was so terrified that when he started to turn to look at me, I froze. I couldn't call out to anyone because my voice wouldn't come out and I couldn't even move. I closed my eyes and didn't open them again until it was time to get up. I went to school looking like a mess because I went days without looking in the mirror. I never stayed alone in the bedroom again or in any place with mirrors. P.S. To this day there's no mirror in my bedroom. By Tias. 15. Black Silhouette. I once spent a weekend at my grandfather's house when I was 8. I was laying on the sofa and went out like a light. When I woke up again, it was already night, and I saw the black silhouette of a man sitting on the sofa near my feet, looking right at me. I couldn't see his face, not even a trace of his features, just the silhouette of a burly, bald man. I screamed for my mom, and she came to see what was going on. I told her, but she didn't take it seriously, thinking I had just dreamed the whole thing. But I know what I saw, and it was very real. By Guillermo. 16. The Legend of the Headless Man. When I was a teenager, I had some friends over at my place for a sleepover. That night, in the wee hours of the morning, I woke up to the sound of somebody calling for me. When I opened my eyes, I saw a headless man right in front of the group of us. He was wearing slacks and brown shoes. I screamed so loud that it woke up my parents and the other girls. The next day, nobody but me really remembered what had happened. I still remember it to this day, and I'm almost 30 now. By Tatiana. 17. The Dead Ballerina. When I was a child, I walked into my bedroom and saw what looked like a Japanese girl in black ballet tights with orange stripes. She was stopped in front of the mirror, looking sideways at me. When I looked again, the girl disappeared and I ran from the room, making my mother come back with me. Years later, she confessed to me that she had been frightened that day because before I was born, she had given ballet classes in that bedroom. The black and orange uniform had belonged to a girl that had been a student of hers who had passed away. Nicole. 18. The Violent Dementor. One night, I suddenly woke up and saw an apparition, or who knows what, that looked like a Dementor from Harry Potter staring at me. We remained there, eyeing each other for a while. Then the being's arm reached out and began squeezing my wrist. I felt a lot of pain and was desperate to get away but couldn't. The only thing I could do was close my eyes and sleep. By Jenny. 19. Hallucination. One evening I was alone in my bedroom doing homework. Suddenly, I heard the sound of footsteps coming from downstairs, so I got up to check it out. Before I started down the steps, I heard the sound of bottles breaking in my father's bar downstairs, which went on for a little while. I made my way downstairs, but when I reached the landing, I could see broken bottles and glasses all over the floor, and I could hear people screaming in the house, even though I was the only person home. I locked myself in my room and stayed there until my parents got home. And guess what? There wasn't a single broken bottle or glass or anyone except for me in the house. By Gil. 20. The Hand That Rocks the Nightstand. I had a nightstand next to my bed, and one night as I was laying in bed, the nightstand just started swaying as if someone were rocking it. The nightstand was extremely heavy, there wasn't any breeze, and I wasn't leaning on it. I sprinted out of the room, and to this day nobody can explain what happened. By Helena. 21. The Sinister Funeral. A former teacher I had actually told me this story. When she was about 15 years old, she used to go exploring waterfalls with her friends. It was a Sunday and they had decided to go to a waterfall that was close to a little farm. They were all walking down the road when a long line of people appeared in front of them, walking away from the farm towards the city. As they approached, they realized it was a funeral procession. They passed the procession and could see that it was made up of only men who were all dressed in black. They all had their heads lowered in such a way that it wasn't possible to see their faces. When the group of friends turned to watch the procession go, it had vanished. By Santos. 22. The Ghost with the Foul Mouth. My paternal grandfather passed away, and after the funeral, our entire family returned to the little farm where he had lived with my grandmother because we didn't want to leave her alone. My grandfather was an extremely irritable old fellow who went around grumbling about pretty much anything, including any loud sound, or voice, or laughter. My aunts and cousins and I were sitting on the veranda talking, trying to dissipate the air of sadness. After an exhausting day, we were ready to laugh a little, but as soon as we did, we heard shuffling footsteps from inside the house and a grumbling voice say, "Shove that yelling up your ass," exactly how my grandfather did when he was alive. We all froze, it was as if he were actually there. A short time later, my grandmother ended up moving away from the farm. By Samantha. Hi again. If you've listened to the end, put a fire in the comments, you're the fucking master. Did you like the video? If you like it and subscribe, you're the fucking master per 2. Oh, and if you recommend it to anyone, you're a fucking beast. Thanks, have a nice day, or sleep well, whatever you're going to do now. Although if you get bored, you can watch some other videos from my channel. Enjoy. Thank you. Bye.